Let's go ahead and get started. My name is Ben Harris, and I'm going to cover some of the required AIA credit slides at the beginning of the presentation, and then we'll get started. This is a provider name is Apollo BBC, and the title is a Historical Course Workshop. The presenters are Alan Pettingale, Benchmark Harris, that's me, Andreas Stavridis, Gordon Shepard, Michael Schuler. And this is the standard slide about how you get your credits. I think you all are familiar with that. The course description was in the flyer. I believe everybody's seen the flyer. AIA members that attend all 4 presentation sessions today and then provide their name and email address when the sheets are distributed at the end of this day will receive 6.5 learning units credits. Partial credits not permitted by AIA. This is here are the learning objectives. To understand, there are many learning objectives, but these are the 4 official ones. Understand how the U.S. Department of Interior's recommendations and the Texas Historical Commission's rules apply to restorations of historic masonry. At the end of this, you should be able to understand how building officials apply the International Building Code and IEBC to historical masonry structures. Apply a working knowledge of current industry standard, masonry standards, equipments, and techniques. And then finally apply lessons learned from examples of several different types of historic masonry remediation, stabilization techniques that are often necessary with historic masonry. And with that, I'm going to pull up Al. Oh no, Dr. Berg, you wanted to start. Let's see.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I'm Bill Berg. I'm chair of the engineering department here, and I want to welcome all of you to UTB, and particularly to the engineering department here at UTB. We are pleased to host this workshop on historic masonry. When Dr. Stavridis contacted me a few months ago regarding having such a workshop, my first 2 thoughts, which I shared with him, were this sounds like civil engineering, this sounds like architecture. UTB has neither civil engineering nor architecture, although I know that civil engineering is the major engineering going on in Brownsville. Perhaps Pan Am would be a better venue. And my second thought was, gee, I live in a historic masonry house myself. Wouldn't it be nice to learn some of the recipes for the plaster that holds our clay tiles together? We worked out first to have it upstairs in the Set B room, which seats 50 or 60, and then the numbers seem to grow. So here we are, and I hope the numbers grow with students coming today. The engineering department is growing rapidly at over 25% a year, and we're looking forward eagerly to the merger with Pan Am into the new Rio Grande Valley University, where the Brownsville campus, we look forward to hosting or having all of the engineering programs available to the entire university here on this campus, including civil engineering. We are currently working towards planning authority for an aerospace engineering program, because that seems to be coming here also. I want to welcome you again. Thank you very much for your attendance, and look forward to an exciting workshop.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of you in the audience might have known me from last year when I came down here for a visit, and we sort of got into coming down here, and we met a few people, and we got together to talk a little bit about masonry. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was picking up. No, it is, but I think since they're recording it. Thank you. So as I was saying, I had the opportunity to come down here and get together with a few people and go downtown Brownsville, which to me was just a movie set. I come from England. There's nothing better than to come from England and to come to Texas and then come down to the farthest point and see some of the buildings and such an array of buildings that have been built. And one of the things that really got to me was that I don't go to church very much because I'm a Church of England guy. But when I saw the cathedral, my friend Ben Harris said, then you're going to have to come to church. So I did, and I went inside the church, and it's one of the most beautiful cathedrals I think I've seen in a long, long time. It's absolutely beautiful. And then when we started being escorted around and walked around by a few people, they started pointing out some of the buildings. And one of the ones that really got to me was the town hall. Town hall itself has been refurbished, but beautiful, and you've had 3 town halls in the past. One of them, they got pretty much taken out of it in 1933 with the hurricane on the bottom left. We've got the hide and tanning factory that was original, and these are things that people are telling me, so please, if there's any historic bits that I do miss out, please bear with me. But used to have thousands and thousands of hides going through and was a major, major industry. You've even got the oldest jail in Texas. I went in the oldest jail in Texas and got out and went to court in one day. That to me was amazing. My friends back home still don't believe it. Even the bus yard itself has the character of the Spanish theme and things like this. The Fernandez building on the side, as I say, this building down here that was rebuilt in 1933, the Masons Lodge that they still use now, is absolutely beautiful. And I wanted to come back down, but next time I wanted to come back down, I wanted to explain just how we refurbish buildings, but go into it in a bit more of a technical detail. So for that, I needed to bring some friends. So I did. And then I put it to Brownsville that I'd like to come back and chat with people to be able to just go through some of the dynamics of how the buildings can be repaired, how they can be restored, what components are needed. And I think if we start from ground level, there are people in the audience that understand buildings, but we wanted to approach it where in the audience that people don't understand a lot about buildings, can gain a lot of knowledge from this. Specifiers, engineers and architects, we're always willing to learn and expand our horizons. So, Brownsville Historic Workshop, this is where we are today, and this is where we're starting. Now, when I left Brownsville last time, something clicked. And it wasn't until I went back and I started looking about Texas historic town squares. And one thing that came to mind was that they're all very similar in the fact of the way that they were constructed in almost like a proper downtown square, in the fact that we have the town hall, and then around the outside of the buildings, other structures are built. So, I actually want to show this. Now, one thing that I realized was that doing some research, that there are 254 courthouses in Texas, all different styles, absolutely beautiful. The designers from Europe and America come up with all kinds of different designs for these buildings, and the architecture is absolutely beautiful. But then I started thinking, well, 254 courthouses, they've all got town squares, and then around the actual town hall itself, and it's the same where I live in McKinney, in Texas, has the similar footprint in the fact that you've got the courthouse, and then we have merchant buildings around that that were designed for selling merchant materials. And then from there, commerce started to come about. And within these squares, we've got a bank in some of them, and as always, we have a beautiful church. And one thing I've noticed in a lot of the small towns and across Texas, the churches are outstanding as well. And then with that, around the actual square, you start coming off with the municipality buildings. And build a hotel. And then the people that were traders and things, and the bankers and the merchants, around the actual town square, started to build beautiful houses of different architecture, Europe, German, French, English, colonial, Spanish styles, all started to come into the fray and started to get mixed into this. So I did some more further research and started looking at this. And then what I came up with was that within these town squares, there were similar problems starting to arise with these buildings. And the problems that I started to notice and pick up on from repairing a lot of these structures were that we had a list of problems that appear regularly on 18th century and early 19th century buildings. Well, the first one, eroded mortar joints. Most buildings after 100 years need repointing. Rotating walls where they're not anchored in place became another thing that started to appear. Cracked brickwork, cracked units when buildings move and things like this, we started to get cracked units and brickwork. And failing lintels because they cover such an array, from wooden to steel to stone. Moisture penetrating walls. When the water starts penetrating the walls, that's where problems arise with decay of wood and things like that. And one of the big ones that I sort of always get involved with is parapet walls and signage. Corroding steel anchors, rebars and lintel. When steel starts corrode, it starts expanding and causing problems. So what I wanted to do was put some information together that we could cover this from the beginning to the end so that we could sort of start looking at it from an engineering point of view, architectural point of view, build it across, and then come into it with a few case studies of how these things are approached. So as Ben said, our speakers today are myself, Alan Pettingale, from Specialized Masonry Restoration in Dallas, Texas. Andreas Stavridis, PhD of University of Arlington, where he teaches. Michael Schuler has come in from Colorado, of Atkinson and Noland Associates. Gordon Shepard from Apollo BBC in Houston, Texas. And Benchmark Harris of Huckabee and Associates in Arlington. So, on that note, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass over to Ben, and he can introduce the next stage. But I think that today we're going to try and open you up to a bit of how we see the buildings. And at the end of the day, we're looking forward to having this workshop.